Blog Talk Radio.
Following ingredients include a look behind the scenes. Cook uncovered until hot. Add grooves to taste.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl.
The accident was over a year ago. A second woman has been elected president. The 12th planet has been named in the solar system. The last wild polar bear has died. I slept through it all. I was here for my waking. He called it a beginning. He said it was good. I think you may have thought that anything I did was good.
Welcome to Transitiion Radio with your host, Mark Angelo Cummings.
And your hostess, Jessica Cummings.
A show for trans folks by trans folks, here to let your voice be heard.
And good evening and welcome to Transitiion Radio. My name is Mark Angelo Cummings, your host.
And I am Jessica Lynn Cummings, your hostess. Tonight's show is being broadcast live from Silver City, New Mexico. We wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors, thebreastformstore.com. They have everything you can imagine to enhance your feminizing needs.
And Dr. Vardan Maderosian, a facial feminization specialist who is based out of Jupiter, Florida. Please visit our website and click on the links that we have there and actually big banners and show them your support and tell them Transitiion Radio sent you. Remember, tonight, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please feel free to call in at 646-716-6895. Again, that's 646-716-6895. Well, one of our topic of discussions today is DES. And many of you who haven't heard this is an anti-miscarriage hormone that was given to women back in the 50s until the 70s. Could this be a major cause in the rise in trans individuals as well as the fertility drugs being used today? And this is one of the big questions and topic behind why there are so many coming out of the woodworks.
Very possible.
There could be, a lot of people try to say that it's actually the exposure in media. But I believe it, and seeing a lot of the research that I have done, and I am a DES baby because my mother actually could not keep a child and she kept miscarriaging, so they gave her DES back in Cuba, and hence here I am.
Well, I think that it's not just all DES related. I think it's all due to the chemicals and everything else that's in our foods, or when our mothers were pregnant, let's say. Back then they were using hormones to fatten up the cows and the chickens and et cetera. So maybe it's caused a problem with our gender centers, in our brains, with all these chemicals and stuff that they have going on.
That's a possibility. And also, we're looking at a lot of women nowadays who are giving birth to a lot of the young transgender individuals who are coming out very early in life. And a lot of these women, either it's their last child, they've had 3 or 4 children, or they've actually taken fertility drugs to try to get pregnant. So you've got to kind of wonder, because ours is a neurologically based situation, which is also tagged with autism and a lot of neurological issues, as well as anxiety and other obsessive compulsive behaviors, ADHD, and all these things. So you kind of wonder if it has a root based on these excessive amount of hormones that we see in society or in our environment today. I mean, it's just food for thought. A lot of people haven't really thought about this maybe, but it's something that it's worth considering, worth doing the research, and I think that the science should look deeper into this instead of just fluffing it. And one of the reasons they're fluffing it, because there was a point there where there was going to be some sort of lawsuit against the makers of DES, and they stopped using it, obviously, because they figure, like a lot of things. But it's...
Oh, come on, these big pharmaceutical companies don't give a crap about lawsuits. That's a drop in the bucket for them.
Oh, that is true. They figure collateral damage.
They don't fear lawsuits, believe me. If they did, they wouldn't be putting half of these drugs out there that are out there with all these crazy side effects. I mean, look, you got diarrhea. they give you a pill. It cures the diarrhea, but it also may cause sudden death, gives you paranoid delusions, gives you all these other side effects. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'll deal with the diarrhea, you know? Screw it.
That's crazy.
Anyway, well, my suspicions have been put to rest. I believe it is estrogen that creates the fiasco in trans women. There is a study that was actually done by Yale University talking about this.
Definitely, and here's an interesting article. Estrogen makes the brain more vulnerable to stress. New Haven, Connecticut, I guess, is C1N, and high levels of estrogen may enhance the brain's response to stress, making women more vulnerable to mental illnesses such as depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, according to the Yale study.
This finding may explain why stress-related mental illness occur at least twice as often in women as it does in men. It also may explain why the discrepancy in prevalence begins in women at puberty, continues through the childbearing years, and then declines in the postmenopausal years, said Becca Shansky, a graduate student in neurobiology. Let's see if I can pronounce that. Neurobiology at Yale School of Medicine and lead author of the study to be published in the March issue of Molecular Psychiatry.
The author also found that the female rats showed this sensitivity only when they were in high estrogen phase. To investigate how estrogen was involved, the research removed the ovaries of a new group of female rats to eliminate any circulating estrogen. Then they implanted a time-release capsule containing either estrogen or placebo and repeated the experiment.
Animals with estrogen capsules displayed the same sensitivity to stress that females in a high estrogen phase did, while animals with placebo capsules were unimpaired. It is known that estrogen can interact with molecular processes involved in the stress response, and that certain genetic variations have been demonstrated in clinically depressed women. How these factors combine to produce the disparity in the prevalence of this disorder is unknown, Shansky says.
Such knowledge will hopefully lead to the development of new, more effective treatment for depression. So there you have it, folks. This explains some of the problems in our community.
With women in general, I mean, I have yet, at least in my lifetime, to actually see a genetic female that can handle stress very well. Men as well. I mean, men, there's a lot of men out there that cannot handle stress. Now, you take in, basically in transition, when we take estrogen as trans women, we are constantly in that high estrogen stage. How when a woman gets a high estrogen stage, it's like when she's pregnant or she's going through postmenopausal PMS.
Yeah.
And premenstruation, excuse me. So when they're going through PMS, they're at those high doses of estrogen, and those are the times based. Now, with trans women, we're always taking high doses of estrogen to continually change our body. So it's like we go through a puberty all over again, but we're constantly stuck in that puberty. And I think that keeps us from being able to deal with stress a lot. It's a lot more difficult than if we weren't on estrogen.
Right.
We would be able to probably deal with the stress a little better, and it would not cause so much anxiety and depression.
And I believe that's why we're seeing in the community the constant badgering of each other and the constant fighting. It's because it's like being on PMS.
Oh, hold on a second. It's FTMs that are bickering and bitching just as much, so I don't want to hear it.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, they're a little bit more laid back, but still, I still see a lot of FTMs.
Even the studies prove that there have been, and I did a lot of this study because having a business that I would tailor to clients' dietary and fitness needs, there was a lot of genetically born females that would come to me who had eating disorders and issues and couldn't handle stress very well, and they were, sure enough, I would have them go to the doctor and find out their estrogen level, and they were very high estrogen. And so, in the society that we live in, that a lot of the foods are very high estrogen as is, add estrogen on top of estrogen, then you're dealing with a lot of these problems.
Exactly.
But it's important to know, because as a genetically born female that I was, when I would go through PMS, it was nightmare. I mean, it was crazy. So I did a lot of research on this particular topic, and it does show that if you are an individual that creates more estrogen than usual, you're taking a lot more things that are out there, whether it's in the food supply, that will create more estrogen dominance. It's what is called estrogen dominance. Then you're dealing with issues. Nowadays, even men, because of the food they are eating, they're actually finding themselves with estrogen dominance as well, even though they are genetically born male.
Right, exactly.
So it's something to think about. It's nothing to be made fun of, but it's something to be aware. And I think awareness is the key to change and to learning how to deal with the situations around you.
Exactly. So the Southern Baptist Convention approves anti-transgender resolution. Today, during the Southern Baptist Convention's annual meeting, members approved the resolution which essentially denies the lived experience of transgender individuals everywhere. The delegates affirmed that God's design was the creation of two distinct and complementary sexes. Sex is male and female, and that gender identity is determined by biological sex, not by one's self-perception.
The resolution, which passed without discussion, opposed hormone therapy, transition-related care, and other efforts to alter one's bodily identity. Delegates also expressed opposition to government efforts to validate transgender identity as morally praiseworthy and call on transgender people to trust in Christ and to experience renewal in gospel.
Oh, it's kind of like trying to cure gay through God.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, trying to cure your identity through God isn't going to work either. Idiots. Anyway, this is hardly the first time that the megachurch has come out against LGBT people and their staunch anti-equality views, which are at odds with most Americans, continue to cost them members and churchgoers since 1976. The Southern Baptist Convention has passed numerous resolutions that repeatedly assert the church's commitment to preach, teach, and politically organize against LGBT people and their supporters.
And it always amazes me how religion, politics, and organizations always try to place individuals in a box.
You know, it's so funny. I think that it kind of makes me, with all this kind of stuff that goes on, it kind of makes me think that God is a bigot.
Well, it's not God, it's the people.
You get my drift.
Yeah, right.
I'm not saying that God, she is a bigot or he is a bigot. You know, I believe God is genderless and is an entity, not a person like everybody claims to make God out to be. God is a huge entity.
Well, they've made God into a business, and businesses try to control people because it's profitable. You notice that churches don't pay taxes.
Exactly.
And it's very profitable indeed. I mean, you've got some of these pastors that are driving super duper great cars, and they have these huge houses, and all on the 10% tithing that they take from people that go to church.
Exactly.
You know, we don't need a middleman. And obviously, the Bible is to be interpreted by the reader. And you could take a verse and have 10 people interpret what they think that verse means, and you're going to have 10 different interpretations.
Exactly. Well, it's like a joke. I mean, or it's like a story, not a joke. But, you know, when you go into the bar scene, everybody's always telling stories at the bar. And you got this long, long bar, and you have like 15 people stretched across this bar. One person tells the second person a story. The second person tells the third person a different story. And it keeps elevating till finally it started out as, oh, I went to the zoo today and saw an elephant. And then by the time it gets to the 15th person, they interpreted it that they saw a big pink elephant fly out of somebody's butt. You know, so it's like, okay.
And religion is something that's very personable, you know, and people should not try to force their beliefs down other people's throats. I don't understand why these Baptist individuals have such a hard-on with self-expression. I mean, if you look at nature, no two trees are alike. There's even transgender in the animal kingdom. What was that beautiful butterfly that we saw that had part male and part female? I mean, it's just part of the evolution. Call it chemicals in the environment. Call it part of spirit speaking and trying to return to oneness. We have both a male and female side. Every single human being has both a male and female side.
Exactly.
And to try to just throw it under a rug or try not to feel the two sides, it's ludicrous because it's part of who we are as a species. And I believe we're evolving back to that oneness of having both male and female and expressing ourselves as we see fit.
Exactly. And, the whole thing is that, the churches, they all judge everybody else around them, but you never hear them talking about pedophiles anymore. Why? Because most of the pedophiles come from a very high religious background. And what does that tell you? I mean, you got to think about it. We just watched a movie last night that was very religious based on, between the difference between Satanism and about high religion, where it was called Devil's Knot, KNOT. And it was actually a very good movie, sad, but very good. And they talked about that there was three young teenagers that were like into the whole Wicca and everything like that, so they automatically defined them as satanic worshippers, etc. And 3 8-year-old boys were slain. And come to find out that it wasn't. It was the religious town, which was, I forget where it was filmed in, but I won't ruin the whole thing, but Devil's Knot is the name of the movie. It's a pretty good movie.
Part of
it's sad, but it's a really good movie.
The townspeople mentality to want to burn the witches at the stake, when they have been programmed to believe certain things, and if what other beliefs comes in and they don't want to deal with those beliefs, they just want to knock it down. They want to demonize people as they're trying to demonize us in our community. But we have a lot in our own community that are demonizing themselves and are creating a lot of transphobia themselves.
Well, I believe that transphobia does not come from outside of the box. It comes from within.
Exactly.
And I think that instead of eliminating transphobia as transgender people trying to eliminate transphobia, I think that transgender people are actually creating more abundance of transphobia worldwide thanks to the whole scenario.
And talking about the whole scenario, Laverne Cox and Katie Couric confront their teachable moments head on.
Teachable moments.
Yes. The first time transgender actress Laverne Cox appeared on Katie Couric daytime talk show, things did not go very smoothly. Couric pointed and asked Couric about her anatomy, and the actress responded by explaining that the preoccupation with transition and surgery objectifies trans people and prevents them from discussing their broader experience.
In their new interview timed to coincide with Cox, Time Magazine's cover, and the premiere of Orange is the New Black second season, Couric addressed the controversy head on. She explained that after the last time Cox was on the show, she got a lot of flack for, say that 3 times fast, a lot of flack for asking about the physical aspect of the transition process.
She quotes, "I learned that it is very, very upsetting to the transgender community because they feel that people are too often fixated on this and that your anatomy actually has very little to do with your gender identity," Couric said, displaying her newfound knowledge on the issue. "That's great," Katie Cox responded to saying she appreciates Couric's willingness to have her back on the show to explore these issues with more depth and learn out in public.
Cox said she was excited to come back in order to demonstrate how to have safe conversations about these complex issues. "I commend you on really being teachable," Cox added, because not everybody is.
Okay.
I mean, really?
that to me is
I commend you on being
teachable. Roll over and fetch. I mean, that kind of attitude to me is a bit arrogant.
It is. It is. It's a very narcissistic personality trait, and a lot of trans women.
And we need to realize that people are curious. People are curious about our life. It's not like it's something that it's a normal everyday thing. We go and we change our sex to match our gender, and a lot of people have questions. And if we can't answer those questions for them, how are they able to learn?
I'll put it to you like this. If you're going to go out there and you're going to claim to be a fierce advocate and you're going to advocate for the entire community and you're going to speak for all of us, the first thing out of your mouth should be, "I do not speak for everybody." Second thing out of your mouth should be that you're not afraid to answer any questions. If you're afraid to answer questions, then crawl back into your shell, don't leave your house, and don't talk to anybody, because you're doing no justice.
Exactly.
If somebody comes up and asks you about the procedures that we go through or stuff like that, it should not be an issue. It should be something, that should be considered a teachable moment, because a real true teachable moment is somebody that's not afraid to speak about what they've been through, what hardships they've gone through, and what kind of evasive surgeries that are involved with making these changes, and what kind of medications we are on for a consistent length of time for the rest of our lives to continue to be able to present ourselves as who we are. And, that is how you teach people. It's not by badgering them, by telling them, I don't want to talk about this. Why are you even here? Because we didn't bring you here because you're this person. They don't bring you here because of that. They bring you there to learn something about us, and they want to know.
Yeah, and now the whole new wave is to badger, whether it's TV host or anybody in Hollywood, regarding what words they can say, what should they ask. They've even created a book called Trans 101, and it's like, really, there's no such thing as Trans 101, because you can't put a transgender person in a box. And there's no right way or wrong way, because it's all a learning curve. We as human beings are learning as we go along. This is a very new science, and it's okay to ask questions. And if you can't answer those questions, then you shouldn't be an advocate, and you shouldn't be selling books, and you shouldn't be doing things, because what you're doing is creating a very bad taste in the genetic world.
Exactly.
Because they're becoming afraid of us, and we're not here to tell people what they can and cannot say.
Exactly.
This is learning for everybody.
Exactly. And if you're gonna Trans 101, like it's some sort of class, to they actually had some kind of what's it called? Convention, yes, where they teach you how to tell your story. It's like, really? Okay, how are you going to teach me to tell my story and my experiences? That's bullshit.
That's part of the control.
Trans 101, I mean, why don't you just write a book, Trans for Dummies? No different of a concept than that concept. They have DES for Dummies. Everything for dummies nowadays. They should do Trans for Dummies.
It's all, like I said, a learning.
And every transgender person should own a Trans for Dummies book.
Yeah. It's funny, but it's a lot of our own members in the community that need to be educated, and now they're hearing all this stuff out in the media, and they think, oh, that's the way it is. I don't want to answer a question. I shouldn't have to. Well, how can you teach people, And this is why a lot of individuals that go and they transition and they realize, I've made a mistake. And that brings us to our next story here.
The big detransition.
Yes.
ABC producer who changed genders 3 times was fired in May for performance-related issues. Dawn Ennis was canned weeks after her latest transition from her male persona. Dawn Ennis, an industry source, claimed the firing had nothing to do with Ennis' flip-flopping sexuality, which I find that hard to believe.
Right. But, I had a little conversation on Facebook earlier today when I posted this link on my wall, and somebody had mentioned that this is going to make trans individuals look like clowns. Well, this is an individualized journey, and that's why I said one person can't speak for everyone, because we're all different. It's become the thing we do, and everybody thinks it's such a glamorous thing to transition, and then when they do transition and their career goes to hell, their family life goes to hell, they lose friends, their life just turns upside down. They can't take the heat, so they detransition, and they go back and forth. Well, maybe it's not about hormones. Maybe it's not about surgeries. Maybe this is a self-journey of expression, something beyond the materialistic realm and more of a spiritual thing.
Right. But see, unfortunately, it's hard enough going through the changes with hormones and surgeries to be able to survive in the world as transgender individuals. So could you imagine without the hormones and the surgeries, how much more complicated it would be? Because society doesn't accept us as it is. Transition is a huge gamble from the get-go. So if you're considering transition, you might as well say, let me take my whole life savings account and go to the casino and just let it all ride on one hand of blackjack, because that's kind of what transition is all about. It's taking that gamble, and you cannot be in a bad headspace if you're going to transition, because you need to realize that, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be happy no matter the outcome. The outcome could be, that was the scariest thing I think for me with transition, was that I was going to look like some monster or something out of a horror movie, and it wasn't going to go like I planned. But you know what? I said, it's worth the shot. And you know what? I'm going to let it all ride, and I'm going to go with it and see how it works out for me.
But that's why I continue to say that it shouldn't be a materialistic thing. It shouldn't be about looks.
But no, forget it. I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
It's not a materialistic thing. I mean, like you said, you were afraid to transition because you didn't know how you were going to turn out. Well, there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees for any one of us.
Exactly.
And it's a spiritual thing. It's expressing who you feel inside. It's just only been the past 20 years that it's become about surgeries and hormones, because we've existed all through time.
No, there's been other surgeries back in the days. I mean, if you're going back to 20, 30 years now, I mean, in 1930-something, the first transgender surgery was a Swedish MTF, or it was Sweden or something like that. But anyway, what brings me back to what I was going to say is, before I transitioned, I put myself in the mindset that I was going to be happy no matter what the outcome was. And, whether I have to live with myself, at least I know that I made the effort to go forward with it. And I took that gamble, and it wasn't done in vain. It was actually done for the true search for happiness for myself, and I happen to find that. So, happiness.
Like I mentioned before, this is a self-journey. This is not a competition. This is not a glamour thing. This is not trying to be the gender that you think you are or what you feel. It's just being you. And I think the greatest teachable moment for society is to realize that there's not just two genders, that things aren't always going to fit in a neat little box. There's a lot of gray areas in everything in life. And I think that if we start educating society about that, instead of badgering them when they say words or badgering them when they ask questions, it's like, look, this is my journey. This is who I am. This is how I feel. I think we would get a lot more respect. Like, for instance, a story also regarding that teen who was told to take off her makeup and
for her driver's license,
because males do not wear makeup according to what this DMV.
But I find a lot of controversial legalities missing in there, because if she represents herself as this female every day, and that's how she goes out and she lives her life, then she's not causing any means of deception. It's not a disguise. This is who she is. And by law, your ID is supposed to represent who you are. Your photo in your ID is supposed to represent who you are. And if you're forced to take a picture as a male, but yet you're an MTF transgender female, then that photo should depict you as who you are as a woman, not as your former self. And I think that's just somebody in the DMV was religious and didn't agree with it.
Yeah, and I don't know if this individual identifies as transgender, because I didn't read any of that. But there are a lot of individuals that are androgynous, and they do.
Definitely.
Who says men can't wear makeup? In the old days, Egyptian time, male did wear makeup. So we've come to this pendulum where everything is girls should wear pink, boys should wear blue, and we need to break down those barriers. We need to break down those stereotypes. People should be able to be who they feel they should be.
I'm going to create a unisex color. It's going to be called pink.
Pink. There you go. For those, yes, because we're looking
combination of blue and pink.
We're looking at one extreme where now even the transgender community are trying to define themselves. No, I am a woman. Please do not talk about my past. Well, look at the bigger picture. If you were intended to be born a woman, you would have been born a woman. You weren't born a woman. You were born with genitalia of a male, and something happened, whether it was hormonal based, because of food your mom ate, or because environment, or because spirit is talking and we're returning to oneness, whatever the reason is, we need to stop placing ourselves in a box, and we need to grow, and I think that's when society will evolve and will start accepting everyone. Right now, everyone's being placed in a box, and boxes are for when you die and are put 10 feet under whatever the amount of space that they...
And for storage.
Yes, and for storage. But I think
we're running out of time.
When we open up our hearts and minds and accept everyone for who they are, I think we will make this a much more peaceful world, accepting everyone's belief system and respecting it. Agree to disagree. I mean, that's always been my thing. Anyway, we're on the road, and we'll be visiting... actually, we're going to be standing still.
Yeah, we're probably going to stay here indefinitely, but we'll see how that works out.
How it goes, but,
we are guided by a much more powerful force, as opposed to being guided by
plans and things like that.
Yes.
But anyway, thank you.
Everybody knows that when you make plans, they never work out correctly.
Correct, exactly.
No matter how hard you try to put them into play.
Yes, this Thursday we have Eklina, the owner of Trans Shack. That should be an amazing show. Please,
it's going to be an awesome show.
Tune in 7 p.m. Eastern
And
Standard Time.
for those of you that don't know about Trans Shack is an iconic establishment that has been around for 2 decades in San Francisco, California, and it was started and opened up and operated by Eklina, who is the owner and operator of that establishment. So it's a show you won't want to miss.
Yeah.
Check it out and hear what we have to say about the Training Shack. Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hopefully catch you on Thursday. But we want to tell you a little something that we tell you every end of our show.
We love you, but remember to always love yourselves too. Good night,
folks, and take care of yourselves.